We are live at Pearson Airport this hour, where the police watchdog is investigating a terrifying incident for passengers outside Terminal 1. What started as a dispute in the departures drop-off area ended with one person shot dead by officers.
And Donald Trump is back in the picture today, once again talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, while hinting our auto tariffs could go up. The Premier's reaction coming up.
And tens of thousands line up to pay their final respects to Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica. We're live in Vatican City tonight, where the late pontiff will be laid to rest tomorrow.
Plus, closer to home, the Leafs have tweaked their lineup tonight as they take on the Suns in Game 3 of their playoff series in Ottawa.
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lindsay Biscaya.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Live at 5. Ontario's police watchdog continues to investigate after Peel police officers fatally shot a man at Canada's busiest airport this morning.
Police say that deadly shooting escalated from a dispute between a group of travelers outside the airport. We're going to go live to CP24's Beatrice Faisman, who is at Pearson tonight with the latest on what we heard earlier from the police chief. Beatrice?
Lindsay, Lena, very rare to hear from a police chief. Once the SIU invokes its mandate, it kind of creates a cone of silence. But Chief Nishan Duriappa from Peel Police today coming out here to talk about the fact that this happened, as you alluded to, at Canada's busiest transportation hub, Pearson Airport. It was a scene that unfolded just before 7 o'clock this morning. Let me show you what it looks like right now, because my camera operator, Simon, and I managed to go over to the same parking garage where I was first thing this morning to get a look at what the scene looks like right now. We're told the body of this 30-year-old man has since been removed by the coroner. This is video from this morning, actually, not the latest video, but this video from earlier this morning shows you all the evidence markers, the white paper cups there on top of shell casings protecting police evidence after two Peel Regional police officers fired their guns, shooting and killing this 30-year-old man. As you mentioned, this all started as a dispute between a group of people, 2 to 3 people involved. This man's family members also here, we're told. Someone from that vehicle, we don't know if it was the man himself or someone in his group, was here for the purpose of travel. So they came to Pearson Airport to travel, and now it's ended in a tragic way. This is now the video that we shot just a few minutes ago from that same vantage point. It still shows that gray Jeep Cherokee parked. Peel Regional Police, quite a large presence, and investigators with the SIU also piecing together exactly what happened. Here's a bit of what we heard earlier today from Chief Nishan Duriappa.
What our officers engaged in was a discussion with a group of individuals that were experiencing a dispute. Our officers spent an amount of time trying to resolve the dispute, an immense amount of de-escalation and engagement with the parties. However, abruptly, one of the individuals produced a firearm at our officers, and I must say that there were 3 officers that responded. As a result of that, to protect themselves and the community and the passengers here at the airport, 2 of the officers engaged with the individual. As a result, the subject was shot.
The SIU spokesperson, Christy Dinette, describing this 30-year-old man's behavior as erratic, saying that he was agitated, that he had a raised voice. Again, we don't know what caused this dispute, but it was clearly loud enough that a member of the public noticed and actually called 911 to let police know. Of course, police have a permanent post here at Pearson, so they arrived very quickly. A security guard was already trying to de-escalate, and the chief saying that officers spent about 10 minutes trying to de-escalate the situation. We learned from the SIU that the man was initially in the back seat of the Jeep Cherokee, that he got out of the vehicle, and that's when he either produced the gun, that's the words from the SIU, showed the gun, or pointed the gun at officers. That's what Chief Duriappa said. We're still waiting on clarification from that, and the body camera footage is actually going to show exactly what happened, Lena and Lindsay. But here's a bit of what we heard from the SIU about what this man's demeanor was like when officers arrived and what they responded to.
So the information I have is that the evidence is outside of the terminal, in and around the Jeep Cherokee that's parked. As for the nature of the call and the nature of the man's behavior, could be considered possibly a little bit erratic, but I would say in mental distress. Maybe agitated, raising his voice a little bit, something like that, to that effect.
Some of our media coworkers asking Chief Duriappa about who this man was, if he'd been identified at that point, if he had a criminal history, if he was known to police. The chief was certainly hesitating in his answer, simply saying that's not information that he could provide at this point as this SIU investigation proceeds as we speak. Directly above me here at Terminal 1 departures. If you're traveling, head to Terminal 1 arrivals, and you can catch your flight from here. Back to you.
Okay, that's CP24's Beatrice Fazeman with the latest. B, thanks for that.
Thanks, Beatrice. And joining us live now with more is former police homicide detective Mark Mendelson. He's been following this case very closely all day. He joins us live once again. Mark, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Look, we're learning.
My pleasure, Lena.
Yeah, look, we're learning a lot more about what happened since we last spoke with you. What stands out to you about what the chief said and what the police watchdog said today?
Well, I think it's refreshing, actually, that the chief made the comments that he made today, because historically we've always seen, senior officers and chiefs get out and say, we can't comment. It's, the SIU have carriage of the investigation. We can't say anything. So I find that a bit more fulsome into what took place this morning. But it's interesting to note that, the officers went there for a disturbance, possibly over parking. I would imagine the last thing these officers had in their mind was that there'd be a firearm involved in this and that the situation could get violent. So they go, and as the chief said, there was an effort to de-escalate, to try and sort of bring the temperature down in the situation. And clearly that didn't happen. This gentleman, for now unknown reasons, decided to pull his firearm out, and whether it was in the vehicle or whether it was on his person, we don't know. But once that gun appears and gets, allegedly pointed in the direction of these officers, everything changes very quickly. And now the officers are making split-second decisions, really, not only for their own safety, but we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are arriving at the airport, at the departure area, who could be innocent victims all on their own by a stray bullet. So they had to make some very, very quick decisions, and this is the decision they made. This is why we have body cams. And, it tells the story. And Pearson Airport is replete with security video. So there'll be all kinds of angles. We know that Peel Regional have asked for Lyft drivers and Uber drivers and limo drivers and the general public who have cameras in their cars to come forward and provide a different sight line, a different angle, if you will, of this entire interaction that took place. The good news is that nobody else was hurt. Because when you bring a gun into the equation, there's no control over what happens after that.
And Mark, I know we want to talk about when that gun was brought into the equation, but just to go into the sequence of events first, that moment where there was the de-escalation period, police said today it was about 10 minutes when police first arrived on scene that they tried to de-escalate that situation. What would that have looked like?
That would have been the officers using the best weapon that they have. That is their voice and their mouth. That's what they're trained to do, to sort of bring that temperature down, try and bring it down to a normal conversation, get everybody calm, and sort out whatever issues or problems this gentleman perceived that he was having. It didn't work. Clearly, he escalated himself and decided that this was time to take out the firearm. And that's going to be part of this investigation. Where did he get that firearm from? Is he lawfully entitled to have that in his possession, even though in Canada you can't carry a firearm per se, but it was illegally registered? Any involvement with the justice system up to this point? Did he have any firearm prohibitions on him? There are all kinds of questions that still need to be answered. And what's his mental health history? So they'll be going into his social media, his computers, any of his electronic devices to see if there was anything that may have been a flag to what was going to come this morning. It's a very sad situation. It's sad for that family. It's also sad for these officers, because they did not go to work this morning at Pearson Airport thinking that they would get involved in a situation like this where they'd have to shoot somebody.
Yeah, a terrible situation for everybody involved and everybody who had to witness this. Finally, Mark, I want to ask you about the fact that there has been some talk about whether a gun was only produced versus if it was pointed at the officers. Yeah. What does that change, if anything?
Oh, I would suggest it doesn't change very much, Lena. Once that gun comes out, now we're not talking split seconds, we're talking nanoseconds. It takes that long to raise that firearm towards an officer, who have not drawn their weapons. At that point, and they could be dead at this point. So these are one of these horror stories that police officers go through. They get all kinds of training for this, but it's not until you're in those shoes and in that situation where you have to make that nanosecond decision whether to open fire or not. That haunts every officer and every officer's family every day that they go to work. So they didn't have a lot of time to make that sort of split decision, yet they did. But they also had 10 minutes to sort of judge, the mental state of this individual, and they made their decision. And when that gun comes out, you really don't have many options after that. Not with all the people in the area, all the passengers, all the people dropping off passengers. They didn't have much of an option.
Okay, that is former police homicide detective Mark Mendelson joining us live tonight. Mark, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome, Lena.
Thanks as always, Mark. It's 5:11 now, 22 degrees. Let's get a check on your drive. Traffic specialist Adjoa Avoa keeping a close eye on that for us. Hey, Adj, good evening.
Good evening, Lena and Lindsay. Yeah, things have not been easy out there. Aside from everything happening at Pearson Airport with the police investigation, we are dealing with major problems that are impacting the drive on the northbound lanes of the 427. This is in the collectors, just as you make your way through Dundas. Single file through here. It's only that left lane that is getting by. And then if your travels take you in towards Brampton, some fantastic news. We had a multi-vehicle collision with a number of lanes that were blocked. The problems there just cleared. Still watching issues on the northbound lanes of the Don Valley Parkway through Bayview Bloor. Find that right lane and shoulder occupied. Outside of Camberview, we're dealing with a lot of problems. We have a fire investigation. Queen is just closed east of Woodbine. Also, southbound Midland blocked at McNichol for a multi-vehicle crash. Also getting word of a collision if your travels take you out towards Pickering. Bailey closed between Liverpool and Sandy Beach. I'll send it back to you both.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
It is 5:12 right now. This is Live at 5.
Canadian politicians are slamming recent comments from U.S. President Donald Trump, who suggested today that auto tariffs in this country, they could go up. More reaction next.
Welcome back. We are in day 2 of City Council's 3-day meeting.
Yeah, among the items on the agenda today is a review of the rules for Toronto parks. Councillor Josh Matlow says some are archaic and unnecessary, including limits on the number of people who can gather for a picnic and permits required for playing catch or throwing a frisbee. He also wants to see city parks modernized and allow for small cafes and food stalls to allow visitors to enjoy a range of activities.
Torontonians love being outside in the summer, in the spring, and in winter also. Remember during COVID how the parks really saved our mental health? It was all we had. Yeah, I know. It saved our mental health and brought people together in many ways. So, yes, let's look at, because it's a place where we gather, a place where we feel we belong, we're in touch with nature. It's the green medicine that we need, right? And today being so warm, people will be flocking to parks and beaches.
Council will also discuss a motion on the Ontario Place redevelopment in the wake of a new report suggesting Therma misrepresented itself during the bidding process. It calls for a probe into whether the province has taken ownership of the city-owned land by putting a spa on the grounds, and whether the approval of the development would have happened if Toronto's planning principles were applied.
Doug Ford needs to recognize that when he does these ridiculous deals, whether it be the Greenbelt scandal, the Ontario Science Centre shutting down because they said the roof wouldn't stand up, but it lasted a winter with tons of snow, and now the New York Times has exposed another really bad deal for the people of Ontario and Toronto. It's time for Toronto to take a stand, and that's what I'm asking my colleagues and the mayor to do today.
Yesterday, council approved a plan to appoint a traffic czar to help deal with congestion. City officials have identified construction as the biggest reason for gridlock in the city, and Mayor Chow is introducing solutions now, such as removing the cap on charges for taking up a lane of traffic and incentivizing moving lane closures to side streets instead of major arteries.
And also today, councillors unanimously approved naming a parcel of land within Lawrence Park Ravine as J. Robinson Park in honor of the late councillor.
Okay, now to Queen's Park, where Canadian politicians, including Premier Doug Ford, responded today to Donald Trump's latest threats to increase tariffs on the auto sector and his return to annexation rhetoric.
CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live with more. Just when you thought Donald Trump was done with the 51st state talk, he's back.
It never ends, Lena. We really heard frustration from Doug Ford today on a number of things when it comes to Donald Trump. One of the things that really seems to grate on the premier is when he hears the U.S. president say that the U.S. doesn't need anything from Canada. He says he actually wants to reach through the TV. What comes next, he didn't say, but really a frustration. The speech before the this public forum was focused on what Ontario can do to protect itself through not only the next 2 or 3 years, that's the time period Doug Ford's been talking about, but on the other side of that, doing things like breaking down interprovincial trade barriers. That was the government's first order of business when the legislature resumed last week. He also talked about speeding up development. There's been a big focus on mining in the last week or so. And he also really was extolling the virtues of building more pipelines across Ontario to move fuel from Alberta out to our coasts into foreign markets so that we don't have to rely so heavily on the U.S. for the funds we get from that. Doug Ford did express disappointment that we are back in this place where Donald Trump is talking about annexing or taking over or absorbing Canada as a 51st state. Here's more of what the premier had to say.
What a disappointment. I thought we moved past that and we're going to move forward and sit down and have a mutually rewarding relationship moving forward. But I guess he's, as they say, 2 steps forward and then 10 steps backwards again. But let's see what happens on the 28th. I think it'll bring certainty, and the new prime minister, whoever it might be, can go down there, have some of the premiers join, and let's come up with a fair trade deal.
There's still a lot of confusion right now when it comes to auto tariffs. Donald Trump also mused from the Oval Office yesterday about potentially increasing tariffs on autos from Canada. We know that in just over a week, on May 3rd, there's supposed to be tariffs applied to auto parts, but there's been an inability to arrive at a formula. I asked the premier today if they have any more clarity on that, and he said no, and he says it's scary. His feeling is that the team around Trump doesn't even know what he wants to do on things like auto part tariffs until he wakes up on the morning and makes up his mind then. Lena and Lindsay.
Yeah, uncertainty almost seems to be just as bad as more tariffs. That's CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris reporting live for us. Thanks, Siobhan.
Thank you.
It's 5:19 right now. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, thousands of mourners continue to line up to pay their respects to Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica. This is a live shot from inside tonight. We'll have more on that, plus the Pope's funeral, which is expected tomorrow. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Vatican is keeping St. Peter's Basilica open overnight to allow the faithful a chance to pay their final respects to Pope Francis.
Thousands are continuing to make their way through the Basilica where Pope Francis is lying in state. We've got another live look this hour. You can see a lot of people in the Basilica tonight. Wait times of 3 to 4 hours have been reported. The public viewing began yesterday and is set to continue tomorrow before Saturday's funeral mass in St. Peter's Square. Francis passed away Monday at the age of 88 after serving as the head of the Catholic Church for 12 years. And keep in mind with the time difference, this is late at night, early in the morning there. Look how many people inside the Basilica.
And many of the mourners have been telling our Genevieve Beauchemin that they've been waiting hours just to get inside. Governor General Mary Simon will lead the Canadian delegation at the funeral on Saturday. Simon met with the late pontiff when he visited Canada in 2022 to apologize for the Catholic Church's role in the residential school system. She'll be joined by her husband as well as the Senate Speaker. All 5 Canadian cardinals will be there, as well as several bishops And the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, says he will not be attending the service as he feels it isn't right for him to leave the country so close to Election Day, which is on Monday.
Meanwhile, cardinals gathered at the Vatican today for their second meeting since the Pope's death. They say they are still in the organizational phase and have not opened the conclave to elect Francis's successor just yet.
It's 5:23 now, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
A ceremony was held downtown to mark 110 years since the Armenian genocide. We've got details on that coming up next. A nationwide moment of silence in Israel today to remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust.
Sirens blared across the country for 2 minutes. Buses and cars halted on streets and highways as drivers stepped out of their vehicles to pay their respects. Dignitaries, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, laid wreaths at Yad Vashem, the National Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem.
And a Holocaust Remembrance Day commemoration was held in North York last night. The day, known as Yom HaShoah, began in the evening and continues until sundown today. Members of Toronto's Jewish community gathered alongside Holocaust survivors.
And crowds gathered at Nathan Phillips Square today to commemorate the estimated 1.5 million Armenians killed in Ottoman Turkey 110 years ago.
Participants then marched to the Turkish consulate. Today is known as Genocide Remembrance Day for Armenians. It marks the anniversary of the start of the killings in 1915. It's widely regarded as the first mass killing of the 20th century. Armenians have long pushed for the deaths to be officially recognized as genocide.
It's so important to see the youth here. Last night we had a candlelight vigil that our youth organized at the Forest of Hope in Markham as well. And they know the stories. Again, there's intergenerational trauma because we are continuing to experience that genocide. We're continuing to experience that denial. And we're continuing to experience, just as Armenians, hate for just being who we are. And so they know the stories well. Some of them have experienced it firsthand. Some of them had the opportunity to hear it from genocide survivors in their family before they passed away.
It is now 5:28, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
We continue to follow developing news out of Pearson Airport tonight. Ontario's police watchdog has invoked its mandate after a man was fatally shot by Peel police officers this morning outside Terminal 1. Stay with us. We've got the details on the investigation coming up next. We are live at Pearson Airport this hour, where the police watchdog is investigating a terrifying incident for passengers outside Terminal 1. What started as a dispute in the departures drop-off area ended with one person shot dead by officers. CP24's Beatrice Faisman is there, and we'll check in with her in moments.
Donald Trump back in the picture today, once again talking about Canada becoming the 51st state while hinting our auto tariffs could go up. The Premier's reaction, that's coming up.
And tens of thousands line up to pay their final respects for Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica. This is a live look. We will take you to Vatican City, where the late pontiff will be laid to rest on Saturday.
And the Leafs, they've tweaked their lineup tonight as they take on the Sens in Game 3 of their playoff series in the nation's capital. This is a live look in our city.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Lindsay Biscaya. Welcome to Live at 5. We are learning more about a complex investigation at Canada's busiest airport today, where a dispute in the departures drop-off area ended with a person shot dead by officers.
Let's go live now to CP24's Beatrice Faisman at Pearson tonight. Beatrice, we're learning much more about what happened at 7 o'clock this morning.
We are, Lena and Lindsay. And let me start by saying we've just learned from our colleague John Musselman from CTV News. It looks like the investigation starting to wind down on the departures level of Terminal 1. That traffic might very soon be moving up there. But when it comes to the investigation, we learned a ton today, both from Peel Regional Police Chief Nishan Duriappa, along with the SIU spokesperson, both of whom were on the scene talking to us over the noon hour. Let's start with showing you what it looked like just about an hour ago when my camera operator Simon and I went back to the parking garage where I was first thing this morning. That's the gray Jeep Cherokee in which this man arrived to the airport, along with, it sounds like, several family members or several other people in his party. There was a dispute that began initially between 3 or so people. According to the police chief, a security officer intervened. A member of the public overheard it all. Clearly, it was loud enough for them to notice, called 911. Of course, Peel Police, they've got a permanent post here up at Pearson Airport. They arrived very quickly. The police chief saying they tried to de-escalate for about 10 minutes when the SIU spokesperson telling us that the man, the 30-year-old man who was in the back seat of the Jeep Cherokee, got out of the car and at some point while standing outside produced his gun. And that's when 2 Peel officers opened fire, shooting and killing him. Here's what we heard from the SIU.
According to early information, it was at about just before 7 a.m. where there were officers at the airport who were made aware of a man in distress, and he was in a Jeep Cherokee parked outside the airport. And there was some conversations happening with this individual, and early information indicates that this individual produced a firearm, and the officers responded with shots fired. I don't know how many shots. That's too early to confirm. We're still collecting that forensic evidence. But what I can tell you is early information indicates that this male did not discharge his firearm. However, a firearm was produced.
And body camera footage from these police officers will help tell the exact story as to what happened. The police chief told us during his scrum that this 30-year-old man pointed his gun at these officers. The SIU spokesperson there saying that gun was produced or shown to officers. That'll be a key piece of information in this SIU investigation.
With experts like Chris Lewis and Mark Mendelson all day. We just had Mark Mendelson back on the show. We asked him that question, the difference between producing a gun and then pointing it at officers. What are you hearing about how that'll shape this investigation?
Well, it's incredibly important. And I mean, certainly the first piece of evidence, and that's what the SIU will determine, is the recollection of these officers. Keep in mind, the 2 officers who fired their guns, they are not essentially forced by law to give a statement to the SIU. Those are called the subject officers. Just as if you or I were, under criminal investigation, you have the right to remain silent, and so do these officers. But other witness officers will have to give their statements to the SIU. So they will give the statements to the best of their recollection, but the body-worn cameras, they tell the truth. They captured the exact moment this exchange happened. The body-worn cameras will show, did this 30-year-old man point his gun at these officers, or did he produce it? And one of the questions that I was asking Steve Ryan, our crime analyst here, does it matter? If someone's got a firearm and they get out of a vehicle, is that enough perceived threat or danger for these officers, for their own safety, their own lives, and for the lives of all the other people here at Pearson Airport, Canada's largest transportation hub. Incredibly busy. 150,000 people come through here each and every day. So will that meet the threshold? Will the evidence on the body cameras meet the threshold for police justification in this deadly use of force?
Beatrice, it's very rare to hear from the police chief when the province's police watchdog, the SIU, has taken carriage of an investigation. Yet that happened today when we heard from Nishan Duriappa. What stood out to you as you listened to his remarks?
I was actually struck, Lena and Lindsay, about how much detail the chief was actually giving, because you're right. Generally, when the SIU, that's the police watchdog, invokes its mandate, there's a cone of silence created. Police are precluded from sharing information from the moment officers interact with the person onward. They can tell us information about what was the initial call, what did they respond to, who called 911, what did that person on the 911 call say, what were officers arriving to see. But once you get to that point where the officers are now interacting with the man who's now dead, that's generally not part of the details that a police chief or any police service can divulge. According to Steve Ryan, he says in this case, the chief would have to get permission from the SIU to speak. And it seems the chief felt today that the nature of where this happened, Pearson Airport, he felt it was important to get that permission from the SIU and to come out and to share that information. And he said this had nothing to do with Pearson Airport. There was no threat against the airport. It was just this critical piece of infrastructure where this shootout happened. And speaking of the police chief, here's what he shared with us about kind of the nature of the interaction and what he thinks this man was doing here at Pearson.
So what I can say is that they were here for the purposes of traveling, and I can only assume that the nature of any dispute is some sort of crisis. So, that's the most I can probably assume.
The chief wasn't clear, Lindsay and Lena, about whether the man himself, the 30-year-old man, was here to travel or if someone in his party, someone else in that vehicle was here at Pearson to get dropped off to travel. He wasn't able to say. The chief also questioned about the man himself. What do we know about him? Was he known to police? Did he have a criminal record? The chief hesitated answering, actually. He looked back at some of his deputies behind him and said simply at this point that's not information that he could divulge, even though he wants to. And to the chief's credit as well, he stood here for roughly half an hour taking all of the questions from reporters until there weren't any anymore. And so that's really, really rare in a situation like this where the SIU has invoked its mandate.
And obviously still such an investigation ahead of us in this incident today. That's CP24's Beatrice Faison at Pearson tonight. Beatrice, thanks for the update.
And let's get a check on the situation at Pearson now. Our adjoint CA Abois has been following the restrictions really closely, specifically at Terminal 1. You do have a good update for us, Aj.
I do have fantastic news if you're trying to get to the airport and access Terminal 1 via the 409.
Thanks for that, Jonathan.
It is accessible again. I'll show you my cameras. All lanes have since been reopened. So you can see there is a police cruiser. They had reopened the ramp. I was seeing cars get through, and they still are. They're just off to the side. So it's accessible again. You no longer have to be forced into the arrivals to get by and make your way to the departures. Departure access is available again. So that's the best news I could give to commuters all day long. Now, I'm going to show you my cameras where we are dealing with some other problems. This is the northbound lanes of the 427 in the collectors north of Dundas. Collision does have that right lane occupied. And if you're a traveler headed towards the 401, patience is what you're going to need. Slow across the top of the city. Good news, earlier issues have cleared. On City Street, southbound Midland blocked at McNichol. That is for serious collision. If your travels take you out towards Pickering, we have a stretch of Bailey closed between Liverpool and Sandy Beach Road. I'll send it back to you both.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
A child has been rushed to hospital via an emergency run after a head-on crash in Scarborough late today.
Yeah, Chopper 24 was over that scene on Midland Avenue near McNichol Avenue as paramedics and firefighters treated people at the scene. According to police, 5 people were injured here and 4, including the child, were sent to hospital.
In Etobicoke, one vehicle flipped as the result of a 3-vehicle collision. This happened at around 3:45. The car ended up on its roof on Bloor Street near Kipling Avenue, and police say one person suffered minor injuries.
A fire in the Beaches this afternoon on the roof of an apartment building is the center of an investigation.
The call on Queen Street at Hammersmith Avenue came in around 3:30. There were reports of heavy smoke and flames, and the fire may have involved cell phone equipment. The fire was quickly knocked down, and no injuries were reported.
It is now 5:40, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Canadian politicians are slamming recent comments from the U.S. President Donald Trump, who suggested auto tariffs could go up again. Details on that just ahead. Welcome back. The Vatican is keeping St. Peter's Basilica open overnight to allow the faithful the chance to pay their final respects to Pope Francis.
And we're giving you a live shot now of why that is. It's because thousands of mourners are continuing to make their way through the Basilica where the late Pope Francis is lying in state. You can see those crowds. This has been the story all day, really. And many of these people have been waiting 3 to 4 hours just to get inside the Basilica. The public viewing began yesterday, and it's set to continue tomorrow before Saturday's funeral mass in St. Peter's Square. Francis passed away Monday at the age of 88 after serving as the head of the Catholic Church for 12 years.
Governor General Mary Simon, meanwhile, will be leading the Canadian delegation at Pope Francis's funeral on Saturday. Simon met the late pontiff when he visited Canada in 2022 to apologize for the Catholic Church's role in the residential school system. She will be joined by her husband as well as the Senate Speaker. All 5 Canadian cardinals will be there as well as several bishops. Prime Minister Mark Carney says he will not attend the service as he feels it isn't right for him to leave the country so close to Election Day, which is, of course, on Monday.
It is now 5:53, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Coming up, the Leafs can put themselves one step closer to advancing to the playoffs as the Battle of Ontario continues tonight. This is a live look at Maple Leaf Square. Even though the Leafs not playing at home, lots of fans gathering here for the game. We've got details with CJ Liu after this. Maple Leafs fans are gathering outside Scotiabank Arena for Game 3 as the Battle of Ontario moves to the nation's capital tonight.
CP24's CJ Liu joins us live from Maple Leaf Square, which is crowded and very loud tonight. CJ, what are you hearing from these fans?
Lena, Lindsay, these fans have been chanting, "Go Leafs, go," for the past hour. It is not a home game. The Leafs are on the road, but these fans are still hyped up, ready to cheer on the team. It's not every day that the Leafs are up 2-0 in a playoff series. The last time they were in this position was in 2002 against the New York Islanders, and they went on to win that game in 7. But for more reaction, let's talk to some of these fans. Hey, how are you feeling tonight?
How's it going? I'm feeling great with the Leafs comeback. They're going to fucking kill these guys this weekend, yeah.
All right, let's ask you ladies, how are you feeling about the game?
We're feeling great, We're super excited to be here, yeah. How are you feeling? Confident. I know Leafs fans are always confident, but I love that every year we show up and we'll never stop showing up, and this is the year, though, for sure.
Do you feel like the Leafs are different this year? You know, they're up 2-0. This doesn't happen all the time. Are you feeling like you can breathe a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. We can breathe a little bit more than other years, but I think like the energy is there. We've already got this really good start, so I think it's looking good for this game. Knock on wood, but
well, let's ask your predictions. What is your prediction for this game and for the rest of the series?
I'm pretty confident. I think the Leafs are going to win this game. I think so. I think Leafs in 4. Leafs in 4. Yeah. Leafs to the Stanley Cup this year. Yeah. Honestly, I'll say it every year, but this year, 100% Stanley Cup. Yeah. So
that is the best case scenario. Let's ask you guys. We see you have the Eastern Conference jerseys. How do you feel going into this game? What is your prediction?
The Leafs are just dominate this game. They're in Ottawa. It's pretty much a home game anyways, so they're going to win and they're going to take the series in 4.
Are you feeling nervous at all? Max Domi saved the Leafs last game, but what about this time?
This is a free game. 4-2 Leafs, free game.
Okay. Well, coming up, the Leafs are coming up here. Puck drop is at 7 p.m. over in Ottawa at Canadian Tire Center, but fans here have been super excited all night long. Back to you guys.
All right, CJ Liu reporting live from Maple Leaf Square tonight. CJ, thanks so much. We want to just apologize to our viewers for that inappropriate language at the beginning of that interview, but you can see fans are really excited and they're certainly hoping for another victory tonight.
And the energy of a playoff game, they're feeling good about this. It's a little different this year, different coach. You never know.
Hey, you were there Saturday. And the energy, what was that like?
It was amazing. You can't really explain it. Like, it's a different buzz than a regular game. It's just amazing.
It's going to be a good night. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Thanks for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.